Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. As we wrap up this week of looking at superstitions and how they lead to worshiping what we should not, or in a manner that we should not, today we want to look at 3 common superstitions among us. First, we want to look at what happens when you spill salt. You might know the superstition that if you spill salt, you take a pinch and throw it over your left shoulder. This is a tradition that goes back over 8,000 years, and the fact that you throw it over your left shoulder is related to the Latin for left, which was sinister. Throwing it over your sinistral shoulder warded off bad luck, they thought. This all came about because salt was vital for life. Not only was it used for seasoning, but also for meat preservation, wound treatments, and more. In fact, salt was part of a soldier's salary, and that led to the expression, "not worth his salt," to describe a soldier who was derelict in his duty. Salt was first mined in Europe in Austria near a town we call Salzburg, which means city of salt. However, and most interestingly, this tradition of spilled salt being a bad omen is reflected in Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. If you look carefully, the figure of Judas has knocked over the salt. Walking under a ladder, again, points to worship of gods other than our God. In many cultures, a ladder against a wall forms a triangle which was considered to be an expression of a sacred trinity of gods. So to walk under a ladder was to violate this sacred space. There is also a connection to Christianity, however. Later Christians thought of the ladder which leaned against the cross in order for people to remove the body of Jesus, and so it became connected to Christ's death. Walking under a ladder became associated with something bad. The number 13 is also a famous superstition. I was always amused when hotels didn't have a 13th floor marked on the elevator. It really doesn't matter what you call it. It's still the 13th floor, it always seemed to me. But hotels aren't alone. Some countries don't issue street addresses with 13 in them, or their national lottery omits the number 13. The earliest example of 13 being bad comes from Norse mythology. There were 12 gods invited to a banquet, and Loki crashed the party, making the 13th guest. While trying to drive Loki out, another of them, Balder, was killed, and after that the number 13 took on an ominous tone. Perhaps more importantly, the number 13 took on significance after the Last Supper. The Last Supper had the 12 disciples plus Jesus for a total of 13. And of course, right after the meal, Jesus was arrested and then led to his death. So what do we make of all this? Well, I'll return to some things I said on Monday. Superstitions aren't real. They rely on spirits we don't really believe are out there, and they are based in our attempt to understand or explain a world we don't understand. As Thomas Aquinas said, they lead to worship of things we should not worship, or worship in a way we should not worship. Rather, we are called to turn to God in trust, and to be assured that we belong to God. God will act for our good, and we are in God's hands. Instead of being superstitious, we are called to be faithful. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.